I took on this position as head of sales for the French market. First quarter in this role, we achieved something like 50%. 16 months later, we were achieving the highest score ever for the French market with a 270%.
Can you bring us through the entire transformation process?
We went through some very painful moments. What really changed is really what we've been doing more on the people side. We needed to start a new cycle with a new team. One of the biggest mistakes is to think that
Today, we are hanging out with Pierre Trannoy, founding CEO of Atscale, one of Europe's leading scaling partner in the tech scene. And what's unique about Atscale is that their team of operating partners are former CROs, CCOs, VP sales, so by leaders who have been there, done that. And so obviously, this also has been the case for Pierre. And his first sales leadership experience dates back from 2017 when he took over the sales team of Criteo for the French market. And so today's conversation will be focused around that particular experience, as that story is actually one of ups and downs. Because you see, Pierre started as an AE and eventually got promoted thanks to outstanding performance. However, right after taking over, team performance dropped to a low 50% target achievement. It's then actually through impulse control, analysis, building back the foundations, and important decision-making that eventually he was able to rekindle the growth to a 270% target achievement. So gear up for some real talk on sales, culture, and team building, and I hope you enjoy from my conversation with Pierre. What is up, guys? All right, if you're still wondering how generative AI is going to change the sales game, say no more, because I want to introduce to you Clay. In short, it combines prompt engineering with multiple data sources for ultra-personalized outbound campaigns. It's like something you've never seen before, and Clay truly revolutionizes the outbound game. I'm not going to tell you much more, but please just check out wearesales.com/Clay. That's wearesales.com/CLAY. Tell me more about what happened. I don't know back when it was exactly, but you told me that it didn't go as planned. And so can you share briefly that story for
sure.
now?
So basically, my adventure at Criteo started, so I was an individual contributor at the beginning, right? I was hired as a senior account executive on the French market. And straight away, when I arrived in that company, I was amazed by everything. First, we had an amazing office by the beach in Barcelona with amazing view. I discovered amazing company, great results, amazing team. I think what I was the most impressed by was the quality of people I was surrounded by, to see that everybody in every department, sales, but also data science, account management, tech, everything, everybody was very brilliant. And it's not that often that you see, such a pool of talents in every department. So I was really amazed by this, and I was even more amazed by the culture of the company. Everybody, I was coming from the recruitment, I was working just before Criteo, I was working in a recruitment agency, and the company was great. I learned a lot there. And as you know, probably the recruitment industry is very, very, very competitive. So you need to be very, very aggressive as a sales guy when you work in recruitment. And I was used to, this kind of culture of performance where you need to be the first, you need to be a bit aggressive, very competitive with other teammates and stuff like this. And when I arrived at Criteo, I was amazed by the fact that everybody would take the time to ramp up, the new joiners, to help me at the beginning. And it was even a bit, it was is it real? Will it continue like this? And I saw quickly after a couple of months that yes, people was very kind and very nice. And so I was really impressed by this, people the culture, company culture. And I really realized that this is, I think, the most important thing to start a great business and to have great performance. And so I started as a sales guy and love the company, love the product. So very quickly after a couple of months, I was asking to my manager, how do I do to get promoted? Because I want to grow in the company. I want to manage people later on and stuff. So he was calm down, you just arrived, but I will explain how to do. And I tried to follow the advice because I really wanted to grow in the company. So I started to mentor a couple of people from my team, new joiners and stuff like this. I had great results because I was having the habit to prospect a lot. I was very strong in prospection, cold calling, so I was doing a lot of volume. So it worked. Like I was lucky enough because it was working great for me at Criteo as an individual contributor. So then quickly I moved to team lead, and then like a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to take on like the whole revenue team for the French market at Criteo. So I jumped into this opportunity, and I was lucky enough to get the job. Uh, and something important to know is that the French market at Criteo has always been like really, really strong. Like French company, uh, very like I think Criteo is and I think it's still the best success story in the French tech, right? So amazing brand awareness in France, always great performance. We were always achieving as a team between 110 and 150%. Very like biggest market in Europe, in EMEA. So everything was going well. And I took on this position as head of sales for the French market. And first quarter in this role, we achieved like something like 50%. Terrible, I think it was the first time ever that the French market was not achieving on target on this market. So
Just when you
big,
take
big,
over the role.
big deal when I took over the role. So I was like, yeah, okay, I am probably in troubles now.
Yeah. I mean, what is going through your mind when you see that back then? Like, are you kind of blaming yourself for that result, or are you just looking, what the heck happened? What can I do? What could you actually attribute the issue somehow to a very tangible thing, or were you more blaming yourself?
I think that there are a couple of things, right? I think first of all, I was always very like performance driven for myself, and since like maybe 4 years that I was in Criteo, I think I didn't miss like one single quarter, either as an individual contributor when I was sales, and then after when I was a team lead, I was always like I was having the biggest team as a team lead, first line manager at Criteo EMEA. I was having the biggest team with like 8, 9 people, always achieving very strong numbers and stuff. So I was not used to underperform, and it was just like I didn't hit 90%. I did 50%. So first of all, I was like, yeah, first time for me, it's tough. First quarter for me as a head of sales, I was like waiting for it for years to have this position, and then when finally I get it, I basically I screw up, Um, then back in the days, I was reporting directly to the EMD for EMEA, so someone with a lot of experience who has been very helpful to me, by the way. In the meantime, I was dad for the first time, so I missed a couple of weeks. So it was like just a period, six months period of time where it was a lot, So I was obviously blaming myself first, because that's what you do basically when you have an historic of a market that is always strongly overachieving. And then for the first quarter, you add this team, like, you strongly underperform, you blame yourself first, and then you just try to understand, And I think that one of the explanation was that, well, I was new into this role, of course. And I think that over the years, I think that on the French market, we built, and I was mainly responsible for this, right? Because I was team lead in this team, in this French market for a couple of years already. So I participated to build part of the team on the French market. And I think that we put a strong focus for a couple of years in the recruitment and in the hiring processes. I think we've put a very strong focus on sales skills. We were mainly focusing on job fit and, trying to hire people with already strong sales skills. Maybe putting a bit less effort on assessing the cultural fit. And I explained at the beginning that I was first amazed by, the company culture and stuff. So it was great learning afterwards, but I think we were, putting less focus on cultural fit, and we ended with people being very strong sales guys with very strong performance in the first 9 to 12 months, but then not really being team players with the rest of the team, and not the best attitude, not the highest level of coachability, And then you end up after 12, 18 months after with a team that is not performing anymore. People who wants to leave. I remember that back in the days, we had something in France that if you would leave your job, if you would get fired, in Spain and go back to France, you would have a lot of, you could get the unemployment heads, in France for 2 or 3 years or something totally crazy. So some people were just waiting, at Criteo to get fired. And not working anymore, just waiting to get fired, not resigning, waiting to get fired. So we ended up in a situation, like shitty situation, where you achieve 50% of the team, and then you need to do a lot of things. You need to assess internally what you could do with the current people. Do you still have some people that you can put back on track? What do you do with the people that themselves they don't want to get back on track? And then externally, what do you put in place to, swift a bit the shift around, change the way you hire different, profiles, maybe fine tune the onboarding, and so these all the problematics we had to face at that time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think there is a lot to unpack from that story. I'm still kind of wondering though, is it then somewhat of a coincidence that happens at the same time that you moved up to the head of sales position, or there's some then kind of jealousy because I hear people just giving up, not really any motivation anymore to generate pipeline. They kind of stopped working. They were just waiting to get fired. And so I don't know, is that just really part of that culture, and then at the same time that you become head of sales, people get jealous maybe, and was there somewhat of that as well?
I think it was not a question of jealousy, because like the team members back in the days were like, more junior than myself, so they wouldn't see themselves like leading the team. So I think it was not a question of jealousy. I think it was more a question, we were just ending a cycle with this team, not renewing enough, maybe not participating or putting enough things in place to develop those individual contributors, so maybe they were kind of frustrated or tired to be sales and see that, in a team of 15, 20, 25 people, not everybody can get to a management position. We all know that it's very trendy and fashionable. Everybody wants to be a manager, but it's unfortunately not possible to have like everybody becoming a manager, because then you don't have a team anymore, right? So I think we were not good enough in a lot of things related to people, and that's a thing that I always tell to everybody, to all CEOs I'm working with today. And like when you are early stage or trying to have your first manager, you promote your individual contributors, they become managers. That's really one of the first and strongest advice I give to them, is that like really take care of your new managers, help them to ramp up, give them the time, provide trainings, because it's a new job, it's a new role, and it's very complicated. And I think this is something we didn't do good with our individual contributors, is like spending enough time with them, providing trainings, develop themselves. So even if they could not get management positions, they could get like to other positions, probably potentially in other teams or the markets. And we didn't do this well enough, I think, which was a great learning. And we built on this afterwards, because then we built individual development plans for everybody and stuff like this. But I think it's a mix of coincidence, and I think we need to be honest with ourselves. We missed something people-wise, and the people management thing is like the most important thing. You can miss, like as a people manager, you can miss a lot of things. What you cannot miss is really like to follow up on people, make sure that everybody is fine all the time. Everybody that is entering the team is culturally a good fit with the rest of the team. And this is probably something we, at some point, we were too much focused on sales performance, breaking the best sales guys at desk. And I think it was one of the main consequence of this.
Yeah. It wasn't as competitive as in the recruitment role, but there was still kind of the lone wolf type of culture that you need to perform. And if you don't, then yeah. Hi, guys. Before we dive back into the episode, I've got something super, super exciting to share with you. Mark your calendars for May 16, because We Are Sales 2024 is happening. And this isn't just any conference, it is the conference for European sales leaders where you can expect to learn from the best and be surrounded by the most ambitious revenue leaders from Europe. And so whether you're an aspiring sales leader, sales director, VP sales, or chief revenue officer, the We Are Sales Conference is truly the place to be. Tickets are now available, and you can grab your ticket by visiting our website at wearesales.com/conference. Again, it is wearesales.com/conference. And now, back to the episode.
I think it's important to build a strong performance culture is very important, right? But you always need to find the right balance and to always keep a benevolent, environment, an environment where everybody feels safe, where everybody feels that they are improving themselves and that they can grow in the company. And yeah, I think at that point we were just like, we needed to start a new cycle with a new team.
And I want to talk about that, especially also all the transformation that you have implemented. But before we do that, I know that there is also a happy ending to it. And maybe it's a good thing to kind of tease the audience with it. So can you also explain, like, fast forward 12 months, like what can you share about the output, the results?
Yeah, so we did a lot of things, and maybe we can get into more details afterwards. But yes, after I think it was more. I would say it was more 80 in total. It was more like a kind of 15 to 18 months of work, And then we ended up. Then I left Criteo because it was time for me to move to another adventure. But yes, I think that 16 months later, we were achieving like the highest score ever for the French market with a 270% achievement. Amazing team, amazing atmosphere, And that was I was always telling this to my team back in the days. I want to, because we were working in an environment where we were on the French market. Then you have like the EMEA region. So you have Italy, Spain, France, Germany, UK, and we are all friends, of course, but there is always this competition between markets, right? And I was always telling my team, guys, I want the other team to look at us and say that they want to be like us, and I think that at the end it was a bit the case, when we achieved this 270%, like highest all-time record. I think it was great, but we went through some very painful moments to get this. But I think that's how life is, right?
That's for sure. That's for sure. But maybe take us in that journey of that transformation. Like, take it as you have been through it, but like, what were the first thing that you had to change? I guess you mentioned a couple of things, like really having a better culture, or at least, very clear values that define a culture, a better hiring process. You mentioned also individual development plan. So can you bring us like through the entire transformation process?
Yeah. So basically, I think there are two main things that we did. We worked on. The first one is like the internal management of things, So we were putting in place performance plans, with all the people who were underperforming, but that we knew they wanted to stay in the company, grow in the company, and that we could bet on, So we've put in place like some performance plans to improve the performance of the people who were underperforming. We had to put in place for the people who were like really wanted to leave, and not working anymore. We had to just to start, some HR typical processes that are like painful for the whole team, for the people, for like you spend a lot of time, you waste a lot of time doing this, because all the time that you spend handling HR situations is not time that you spend with the people of your team who want to stay. It's not the time that you spend with your leaders as well, because I had a bunch of managers I needed to work with very closely as well. It's not time that you spend ramping them up, helping them with their strategy, tactics, and stuff like this. So a lot of HR situations to handle. So this was more like the internal process, I would say, that we've put in place and worked on for a couple of. This takes time. Huh? Like you don't do it in a quarter or two. Like it's a long process. And then I think there is like everything that is related to hiring, because when you need to renew and to start a new cycle with your team, you need to focus on two main things: hiring, being like better at hiring, and also being very good in onboarding these new joiners. So basically, what we've been doing is that I think we went a bit back to basics in terms of hiring. Like we used to have at Criteo these four pillars. This is something we are working a lot today with our clients as well. But these four pillars hiring methodology, where you have four main topics you will assess the candidates on. First one and most important one, as I said, is the cultural fit. You then have the job fit, because you need to assess the potential, of people. You hire them like to be sales, so you need to assess the potential to be a good sales rep once they're on board. What we call leadership or ownership, the ability of the person to potentially in the future start new initiatives, to see, areas of improvement for the team or stuff like this and take the lead on it, even if, like it's really the way of going out of your own scope of work, okay? You're a sales guy, you're an individual contributor, but if you see potential for process improvement or stuff like this, you go for it. You build a rationale, you propose it to your manager, and then it becomes a side project. And in big companies, even in small companies, that's the best way to get promoted at some point, to show that you do the extra mile and that you can level up. And the first one is what we call the intellectual horsepower. Sounds a bit logical, but of course you need to assess the ability of people to think smartly, to understand every kind of potential difficult situations, the ability to deal with ambiguity as well is very important. So we've put back in place this methodology of hiring, putting a strong emphasis on cultural fit, and redefining the profiles we wanted. As I said, back in the days, we were more like hiring on, okay, we wanted people with sales experience and stuff like this. And afterwards, we were more like focusing on attitude and coachability. I have a great example of an engineer profiles that I've hired, who had like almost no experience in sales, maybe like 6 or 8 months. But we could see the potential, like, to learn sales skills, and what is good about sales is that you can learn it, being a good guy, you cannot learn it. I've seen this, you're a good guy or you're not, and it's not your job as a manager to do this, but it's your job as a manager to teach sales skills. And this you can learn if you have good potential. And this guy, like 6 months after, was the top performer of the team, so that was a great example. And then we worked a lot also on the onboarding and ramp up of these guys, because when you hire people with less experience in sales, you need to be sharper in the onboarding, training, a lot of practice, a lot of role plays, simulations, in order to ramp those guys fast. Use the other people in your team as champions as well in the onboarding program, so they help the new joiners to be, up and running as fast as possible. And yeah, that are mainly the things we've been working on, and create just like collective and team routines. We were doing stuff together every week as a team to bundle the team, because this is very important as well. And then you have like all the other more like focused on sales floor animation stuff that you would do as a sales leader to create strong performance culture. But I think that what really changed is really what we've been doing more on the people side, hiring, individual development plans, onboarding of new joiners, mentoring programs, stuff like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely love this. Thanks for sharing this. Can you maybe indeed like tell us a bit more about the individual development plan? Like, what was it like? I suppose it's different for everyone, but like, what was kind of the idea behind it?
So I think the IDP program is, first of all, I think it's something that every company should do, even like smaller company, because it's really the way. It's important for two main reasons. The first one is that you help your team member to just improve on things he wants to improve, and you are here as a coach, as a mentor, as whatever you like to call it, you're here to help, to improve. So if you improve each individual, it will improve the level of your team overall, right? It's kind of mathematics. And second thing, it's a very strong weapon in terms of people retention, because people who progress and who see that you spend time with them to help them progress in their career obviously they will stay in the company. That's what happened to me. I get the opportunity at Criteo to move, to do several steps in the company because I was working, I had results, but above all, I had people who trusted me. I had managers who trusted me, who helped me to grow as well, and this you need because it's very important. And the IDP is something very personalized to each individual. So you just start basically with, assessing carefully what are the strengths of the individual contributors, what are the areas of improvements, and then you just build a plan, on that you follow on a quarterly basis with some metrics, easy metrics to measure, in order to check like the advancements of the progress of the person. I precise that we check on the strengths as well because I've always believed that it's okay. It's of course you need to work on your areas of improvement, but I think that you still need to work a lot also on your strengths because if you are lucky enough to have a strong strengths in any topic, I think you need to capitalize on it. And you need, if you're the perfect expert on your specific thing, you can be very good at it and then you can use it, to have a promotion, to mentor other people, to do a lot of stuff. So we were both working. We would always choose like 2 or 3 topics we would work on per quarter, and we would just follow up on this, putting in place smart goals, so specific, measurable, achievables, and something that we could follow over the time. And we would follow them quarter after quarter. Sometimes it can change quarter after quarter. If you're not done yet with one of the goals you set up for yourself, it can roll over on the other quarter. But basically, the idea of putting in place the IDP is to really have like a personalized and customized approach for each individual so they can progress faster in the company and allow yourself to have better results as a team as well.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. Because was that something that the managers had to do with their team, or was that something that, was I have a buddy and that buddy's exceptionally good in a certain aspect, so he's going to be my coach on that specific topic for the quarter? Or like, what was that in terms of team organization?
So basically, it's really something that is, let's say, owned and dealt between the individual contributor and his official direct manager. So the follow-up and the tracking of the results and, of the advancements of the plans, they are like followed by the manager, but in the plan for 1 or 2 specific things you are putting in place, you can use, as a sparring partner, as a mentor, coach, or buddy, you can use a team member. But it's really important that the thing is owned by the manager. It's owned first by the individual contributor, right? But like it's really important that it's managed directly by the manager at the end of the day. Other people around are more like support and resources that are potentially available for the managers and DICs to put the plans in place. But at the end of the day, it's something that is followed by the manager.
Gotcha. And so I imagine that, or at least what you explained was you did quite of a skill mapping for each and every individual. But do you then let like about, a couple of periods, couple of 3 to 6 months, the time so that you can assess the skills effectively? Or is it something that you can actually do immediately after that you onboarded someone?
No, I think you need to, this is not something you do in the 6 first months of the person. This is something more that you put in place once, the probation period is done. Once you know that, I really consider the onboarding of a sales rep, I really consider it as at least a 6 months period, right? Where you need to master both qualitative metrics, in terms of conversion rates, quality of pitch, stuff like this, and quantitative as well, which is like quite, straightforward. Are you doing like the volumes of activity that are necessary to hit on target every month? And the IDP is more something that comes after the probation period, once you have totally, past your ramp up and onboarding phase. This is something that comes a bit later. But you use like also the 6 first months to put in place the plan, because, some individuals, they will be very fast in understanding the product and the technology, but a bit slower regarding the sales process. Some people, it will be like the other way around. So you build the plan based on what you've seen in the first 6 months, but like really you start building the IDP once you are done with the probation, and that the IC can fully focus on, I think it's important that, to take the time for the individuals when they arrive to do stuff. And in the first 6 months, you have a lot of information, new environment, new company, new product, new sales process, a lot of things. And so once this is done, then you can focus on the IDP and think about the future.
Love it. I want to go back to the cultural fit aspect, because I am a big believer that had to be crucial. That was super important, probably for Criteo. Like, how do you make culture tangible? Like, how did you approach that? And then how do you also test if people are, a fit with the culture?
How do we create this? I think it's a long process. And I think, as I said, we are speaking a lot about this, but everything starts with the recruitment and with the people you get on board, right? And I think that's why it's very important to spend some time with, situational question. We've been working on it a lot at Criteo, setting up a full methodology, setting up questions, deep questions, in order to understand who is the person. It's never gonna be you can do mistakes. It's very hard in recruitment. There is no environment where you don't do mistakes. But the objective is to minimize the maximum, the mistakes you can do. So we built a lot of processes in terms of hiring, and a lot of questions, a lot of stuff, methodologies, like crazy things, in order to make sure that we can assess, the best way people in terms of cultural fit. Then it's just about communicating a lot about this, within your existing team. Putting a strong emphasis, just like when that a new joiner will join the team in the next month, reminding it to the existing team. Organize an event even before the people arrives in the team. Organize drinks or dinner or whatever, so the people don't feel like a newbie when he does his first day. So there are a lot of very concrete stuff you can organize with your team. And then, you need to maintain it. You need to communicate about it. You need to communicate about the fact that it's the most important thing in the company, and to always communicate about it. I think it's a good way to try to make it more tangible, which is not always easy.
No, but I like the fact that you make it link back to the recruitment, and I agree also with the situational questions that you got to ask, because to me, culture is also kind of an expectations of behavior that you try to set up. It's kind of unspoken sometimes, but then you still see that expectations of behavior happening. And so I think that if you can ask indeed the good situational question of what would you do in that circumstance, then you're kind of testing it without explicitly saying, look, our values are that's what we expect. You should kind of assess that way.
Yeah, I think it's situational question, and you can use them for all the pillars I've mentioned before: job fit, intellectual horsepower, leadership. But I think for cultural fit, it's probably even more powerful. Situational questions, when you ask to someone, could you please give me an example of a situation where you had a conflict with a team member in your last experience? This kind of question, you can't lie. You can't answer something because I will see it straight away, right? If you try to improvise a situation, I will see it straight away. And I think it's really, really powerful to assess people.
Yeah, I love it. All right, guys. Imagine being able to leverage the data from LinkedIn, Google, any website, and then leveraging prompt engineering and generative AI to craft the perfect message. That's now possible thanks to Clay. Clay truly revolutionizes the outbound game, and so you can try it out for free by surfing to wearesales.com/Clay. That's wearesales.com/CLAY. All right, let's go back to the episode. Did you also have to do something, and I really have no idea if you did, something related to the compensation plan? Had you changed that somehow?
Yes, so from time to time, I think compensation plans, this is not something that you should use as a retention weapon. I think this is something you should use as, a performance driver. And we used to use compensation plan. We used to make modifications in the compensation plans when we were, for example, launching a product, when we were late, we were more than compensation plans. It was more like sales floor animation logics, organizing, like putting in place some gamification, putting in place some blitz or spiff, like competitions between teams, in order to have a specific push in a specific period of time. Compensation plans is not something that you should change like too often, because then it creates a bit of, it's a very sensitive topic, obviously for sales populations, like for every kind of populations, but I think that for sales it's even more sensitive. So this is not something that you should change too often, as well as the target setting. For example, target setting and comp plan, they always come together as a very sensitive topics. So this is not something you should change too often. Things that are working very well is to use what I've mentioned before, sales floor animation automatisms, to boost, in some kind of period to when you launch a new product, when you are a bit late on forecast, when you need to close the gap in terms of performance on a specific quarter. But I wouldn't advise to change comp plan and target setting too often, because it creates a lot of tensions, a lot of anxiety within teams, because it touches directly to your money, right? So it's not something I would advise to touch too much on.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice.
Yeah.
And I mean, salespeople also know why you would change that. It's ultimately also for the business and not always in there.
Needs to be built from scratch. So it depends also. Like, I think it's you can change the comp plan and the target setting as the company is growing, For example, at the very early stage of a company, you want to acquire as many clients as you want, right? So even if the quality of the client, of the client is not amazing, you want to sign new logos and stuff. So you will build a target setting and a comp plan that will go in that sense, Then as the company is growing, the most important thing is to keep your clients alive, right? So you will adapt the target setting and the comp plan accordingly. So I think it's a good weapon to use while the company is growing, because as the company is growing, your objectives might change and the priority might change. But you shouldn't change it just like to try and to see what's going on. It needs to be part of a full strategy, high level and long-term strategy.
I think that's good advice. Suppose that people, listening this, they think, all right, I kind of recognize the same symptoms with the team culture that we have. Maybe our numbers also kind of dropping. We might want to implement some changes, just like Pierre did. Like, how did you guys approach that concretely? Like, who was responsible for what? Did you guys have some sales enablement person responsible for it? Was it you as head of sales that kind of implemented all of that? But then how did you work also with the managers? And can you maybe shine a light on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really important not to do it yourself, because when it's touching the kind of, I think the two most important things you need to think about is the way you hire people, so hiring processes, and the type of candidates, the profiles you want to hire. So scorecards of candidates, and hiring processes. And this needs to be done in business partnering with potentially a lot of people. First, if you have managers you are working with, either it's manager you directly manage, peers, if you are working on, if you have peers on other markets, you need to sync with them. And of course, you need to business partner very closely with the talent acquisition team and the people department. I think it's really important, Again, at Criteo, I think we were lucky enough to have a very powerful people department. And I think Criteo was always a company who truly believed, and I truly believe so as well today, that the people function is the main enabler of sales performance. And I really think it's true, So in this kind of process, you need to work with these guys, people department, HR, talent acquisition, because they will be in charge of hunting, the profiles, and your managers, because at the end of the day, first line managers will be the ones who will be managing those guys on a day-to-day basis. So I think that you really need to work together and business partner with the whole organization. But I would say that TA people and operational managers on the field are the go-to persons to build that plan together with.
Mm-hmm. I will try to go a little bit deeper also. Was it a separate project then where you had those different team members entered that project and you had kind of a cadence, a weekly meeting and bi-weekly meeting to try to cooperate all together? Or was it more, someone that acted as a project manager that incorporated different stakeholders at the right time, at the right moment? Or how
No,
would you
I
say
think
that?
it became honestly, I think it became a global project EMEA at EMEA level at Criteo, because then we implemented, um, what we call the hiring committee every week, where we would all review, all candidates that we had in final interviews, and not for our own markets. We were reviewing for all the markets in EMEA, working together with all the managers, we implemented the fact that we would do final interviews with not only one head of per region but at least two. So even if it's not someone from like your market, they would help to assess. And this way you create an harmonized way to build the culture you want to build in your company. And it's just okay, we have a specific culture on the French market, then we have another one on the Spanish market, another one on the UK. No, it doesn't work like this. You need to make sure that company culture is something that needs to be global, and so
Uh-huh.
you need to work with your peers on this. So
I like that.
of course you always have a couple of leaders like honing these things, but everybody at the end of the day, everybody on a day-to-day basis then participates on building this.
I love that. You also mentioned it quite the beginning of the anecdote that obviously it didn't go. I mean, you didn't find the ultimate solution immediately, or that you didn't made all those processes immediately. So I can also imagine that along the way there were like a couple of mistakes, like a couple of bumps on the roads. Were there a couple of bumps on the road, and if so, like what were there?
I think I have one big in mind, and the first one I've done is to think that you can move the thing around in 3 to 6 months. You know, that's what I was telling to my top management, hoping that it would be the case. You don't do this in 3 to 6 months. This is a long process, and it takes at least 12 months. It depends of the size of the teams, of course. It depends of where you start. But I think that one of the biggest mistakes is to think that it's an easy and quick process. It's not. When it touches to people, it's a long process, and you need to put a lot of efforts on it. And then probably a couple of other mistakes, like you can do hiring mistakes again. Of course, this happens, and this happened. But what is important is to put everything together and to put everything in place to make sure that you minimize your chances to do mistakes. In terms of hiring after
I
this.
like that. I like that thinking. And also, like, if you look back at your experience, like, what would you say was also the biggest challenge to make it work? If you have to look at hiring, onboarding, getting everyone from the company on board in that project, or maybe working on that, but next to that, still making the numbers, still working on the sales. Like, what would you say was the biggest challenge?
I think the one that you mentioned is one. Like you still need to the number one thing is to focus. Like you need to achieve on targets. You need to have a good level of performance. So this is obviously a strong challenge. But at the end of the day, they are like very correlated. And the 270% that we got 1 year and a half after, the main reason of this is that we've put this together, in terms of hiring, in terms of onboarding, in terms of company culture, team culture, and everything. But yeah, definitely, like the first challenge is to keep like your main focus on performance, on sales performance, on spending time with your sales, spending time with the team leads, to review performance and to make sure that you are on track. And I think the second biggest challenge, I would say, is to get the people around you on board on what you want to build, as a new setup for hiring, for onboarding, for, building a new thing about the culture, and to convince your internal stakeholders. I had to build a rationale to pitch it to my top management. I had to pitch it to my peers as well to get them on board about the hiring committee things, about the fact that we would help each other to recruit on our own domestic market and stuff like this. So I think, having everyone on board, agree on this, and buying your project and your vision is definitely something that could be a challenge, and that is very time consuming as well.
I love that. I think that's also a good one to end this podcast with, Pierre. Pierre, thank you so much for doing this, for making the time, for coming on the show, sharing that experience. Is there like a way that you want to have a call to action towards the listeners? Is there something that you want to say, maybe towards Atscale? Anything you think might also be relevant for the audience?
I think I will say like something very simple. It sounds probably a bit stupid or stuff like this, but for all leaders who are hiring like people in their teams, I would just advise them to hire kind people. Hire kind people who have potential, of course, to grow in the company. But I think it sounds a bit like world of bisounours, right? But start with hiring nice and kind people, and then you know work with them to make sure they become top performers and superstars within your company. But start with hiring nice and the right people.
Love that. And I also love the world of bisounours. That's
Yes.
that's an European podcast for sure. Love it. Well, Pierre, if people want to find out more about you, like, do you want to send them certain direction?
Yeah, no, you can just reach out on LinkedIn. Always happy to speak with leaders about all of the topics. Like at that scale, the main topics we are working on with our clients are like sales hiring machine, ramp up of new joiners, sales performance management, sales enablement, sales ops, sales execution, and everything that comes after the sale. Like everything that is related to customer relationship, like account management. So if one of those topics is a topic that is a challenge for you at the moment, or you would like to speak about, just reach out on LinkedIn, and I would be happy to jump on a call to discuss this with you.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Pierre, it was such a pleasure to have you on, man.
Same. Thank you very much, Dylan.
Yeah, I wish you nothing but the best, and see you next time.
Thank you, Dylan. Bye bye.
That's it. We've once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And until next week with a fresh new episode.